Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Michelle Maloney. I'm the National Convener of the Australian Earth Laws Alliance, and I'm really delighted to welcome you to this launch of AELA's Earthwords and Artlings Anthology. Behind me, you'll see most of the sign for Earth Laws Month. We were really delighted to be able to pull together the anthology in time to share it at the end of Earth Laws Month, so that folks have something lovely to read when all of the webinars are finished. But before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge country. I'd like to acknowledge that I live, work and play on the beautiful lands of the Yagara and Turrbal peoples here in the gorgeous subtropical countryside that is now known as North Brisbane. I'd like to acknowledge elders past and present, and the emerging elders and leaders who continue the ancient practices of caring for country and caring for each other. As I always do in my acknowledgements, I like to acknowledge the ongoing impacts and legacy of colonisation, my own heritage as a descendant of the Irish folks who were brought here as part of the British Empire and the British penal settlement. And I'd like to acknowledge the remarkable civilizational culture and resilience of the First Nations peoples, so that the work we do inside AELA and our sister organisations, Future Dreaming and the New Economy Network, are part of, I guess, a humble contribution towards decolonising our hearts and our minds and making sure that we are all equipped to care for country and care for each other into the future, and to work in solidarity with First Peoples and all peoples. So turning to today, we are on, I think, the second last day of Earth Laws Month. We've been absolutely delighted. I think we've clocked up something like 35 online events throughout September. And if you have missed any of them, please do check our website. I'll put the link in there in a moment if you're not familiar. We've had events far-ranging from Indigenous knowledge talks about fire management. We've had discussions with Indigenous elders around how we can demand less from Mother Nature. We had an entire week of economics for the earth in partnership with Nina. We've had discussions about law and ethics and education and many other topics. So if you've missed any of it, all of the recordings will be available throughout October. They'll be released publicly onto our websites. But today is all about earth arts, and I'm really excited to be inviting some of our contributors to the Earthwords anthology today. So what I'd like to do first, though, is familiarise those who have not seen the Earth Arts website. AELA's main website, which is earthlaws.org.au, has all of the information that we do. AELA focuses on increasing the understanding and practical implementation of earth-centred governance. And one of the many threads of our work, and one that's really important to me personally, is our Earth Arts program, nurturing the role of creativity in transforming law, governance, and everything else. So today, in a moment, I might hand over to James Lee to talk a bit about our Earthwords and Artlings Anthology. But before that, I just wanted to show you, and I'll use the website so that you know where stuff is. Here on the Earth Arts website, we've got our beautiful virtual gallery, and I spy some work by Marion Drew, who's about to speak to us in a minute. But when you click on this beautiful virtual gallery, it's connected to the theme of our anthology as well, Tipping Points, and it's featuring work from a number of wonderful people in the AELA Earth Arts Collective and some new friends as well. So I won't go through it all, but I really want to say an absolutely huge thank you to James Lee for setting up all of these wonderful aspects on our website, and also being a creative himself and contributing in so many ways. So that is our virtual gallery. And you'll also find, if I go back to home, we released our first Earthwords and Artlings anthology 2 years ago, and you will find that beautiful piece here on the Earthwords and Anthology page. But James, I might hand over to you to talk about why we created Tipping Points as a theme for our Earthwords and Anthology this year, and talk a little bit about what we've been up to. And then I'll introduce some of our wonderful contributors to talk about their own work and their pieces that they've shared into the anthology. We have today with us Marion Drew, Andrew Skiok, Oh, sorry, Karen Coombs-Valiantis and Karen Hopkins. But over to you, James. I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And hello, everyone. I'd firstly like to acknowledge that I am on Turrbal and Yagara country and live and work on this country, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And yes, so tipping points, what is this all about? It's kind of there was a bit of a fortuitous event actually this month, and a global report has come out about climate tipping points that indicates that things aren't too rosy, that they've sort of mapped out some climate tipping points back in 2008, but they went and reviewed them and expanded on them. So these are people from the Stockholm Resilience Centre, the Potsdam Institute in Germany, and and just basically saying that climate tipping points will be crossed even if we keep things to 1.5 degrees warmth over pre-industrial levels. So yeah, so it's kind of like when Michelle and I had our heads together sort of thinking about the theme for the anthology, I did have a thought in my mind. A lot of things seem to be brought into the world, like ideas brought into the world, and then later on it's kind of like, well, actually that's not really an adequate idea or an accurate idea. But tipping points do seem to be a real thing. And so we put the call out, and we've received just some amazing works from visual artists and storytellers and educators and poets, and from all across Australia. So to all of the contributors on the call now, thank you so much. It's a really, really rich anthology, and I think when you read through it, it's just so full of heart. And I think that speaks to what AELA really wants to bring with its art program, is to bring some of that human and hopeful views of things, you know, even in the face of some quite traumatizing and anxiety-inducing realities. So I'll just, if I can share. I don't even have it open. That's a bit silly.
We've been very busy today, rushing from one webinar to another. But yes, I've made you co-host, James, so when you can find it, you should be able to share it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll just share briefly and just sort of scroll through as I talk, just so you can get a bit of a view of what we have going here.
It looks so beautiful. James is so good at the formatting side of it. Sorry. He's so good at everything, but also just makes these beautiful and look, blue-banded bee. We have to pause on the blue-banded bee. Okay. Can I just tell you a quick story, because artists will appreciate. When my father passed away just under 2 years ago, I was in Barcaldine getting ready for the traumatizing funeral, and James Lee, my very best friend, sent me a note saying, I made this little blue-banded bee for you. And it brought me to tears, because I knew he was thinking of me. And now we use it in many things because it represents a lot of heart. James, can you just go back up for one moment to that other beautiful image? Isn't that just amazing? Oh, down a bit. Oh. Yes. Just so many beautiful images. I'll stop talking now and let you talk. Sorry. I just want to tell you about the beautiful bee.
Yes, I was going to just add that. So on the Earth Arts website, you'll be able to find it under anthologies. And so we've got the Volume 2 anthology here. And I have just uploaded it, and it looks a bit weird, but no, that's just how it's doing it.
I'm sure you'll make it more beautiful in time.
Yes, and so we've got the list of the contributors here. So again, thank you so much. Yeah, and I think that's mostly it. And the other thing I think Michelle covered was a huge thanks to all the artists who have contributed to our Tipping Points gallery. And so this is our virtual gallery that sort of runs in parallel with the anthology. So you can see the artists who've contributed there. And feel free to jump on the website and click through and have a look at some of these very slow loading, but beautiful artworks that are now loaded up here. And I will stop sharing.
Just wonderful. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Huge. Yes, I think everyone, if you know where the reaction button is, I'm going to press the applause and then I'll press the love heart. Thank you to everyone who contributed, and a huge thank you for James, who's been working very, very hard over the last few weeks on our Earth Laws Month, all of our activities, including formatting the beautiful anthology. Now, I do want to remind folks that one of the reasons we're all online today, and one of the reasons we have a virtual gallery, is that we used to have, and Marion Drew, who I'll introduce in a moment, a dear, dear friend and partner in crime in building our Earth Arts Collective. I remember we've had some beautiful in-person exhibitions at art galleries as part of AELA's Earth Arts work. But COVID kind of pushed everything online. So this year we just decided we'll just go with it and, you know, nurture the virtual gallery. But hopefully over the coming years, we'll be able to return to meeting up in person and drinking wine and looking at art and talking about art, because that is part of the fun. So, and let's thank you, everyone. There's some lovely comments. Beautiful job, James. Thank you, James, for your time. Yay for James. All right. So now we're really delighted to hand over to some guest speakers, folks who've contributed to the anthology and who are sharing some thoughts, reflections, and even talk about their work, whatever they would like to do. So first of all, I'll introduce Marion Drew. As I mentioned, Marion is both a dear friend. We met many years ago when we were exploring science and arts interconnections, and we started to collaborate together. And it was Marion and I that thought, how can we bring artists together more often when we have no budget, which is terrible, and we must try to find money to support our beloved artists. But Marion's helped create the Earth Arts Collective, and Marion's a renowned photographer and an absolutely wonderful creative. So Marion, if I could just ask you to unmute, and we'll hand over to you to share some of your thoughts about your own work, tipping points, and anything else that inspires you today.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everybody. I'll just give a bit of history. I think we met in about 2011, and when we were writing an art science grant application called Climates That Art Can Change, which unfortunately didn't get up, but you know, there was a coalition government and you weren't even allowed to mention the words climate change at that point. But you know, that doesn't stop people. Michelle went on to found AELA, and soon after we started doing, I was a lecturer at the Queensland College of Art, and so I corralled, we did this intensive mode student workshops for a week, where we would go to, you know, the countryside near Nimbin and South Stradbroke Island, and we'd have Michelle would always come and do talks and work with the students, and we'd have Indigenous speakers and scientists and historians, and then the students would all make work, and then we would have an exhibition, usually sort of coordinated to, you know, as a part of a wild law conference, the first one, which was called Reorientation, Human-Centered to Earth-Centered. And then some of the others were in relation to the Rights of Nature Tribunal. So Plenty, which was at the Powerhouse, which was a big event. And then Jenny Brown curated another one at the Spring Hill Reservoir. I think that was 2018. And then we've had the last one was at a vacant assembly in 2020. Where COVID hit and I couldn't make it. I was stuck in Victoria. And then, but in that one, it was an association. We worked with the Australian Forum of Acoustic Ecology. And so, you know, it was broadening, you know, we started at students and now it's kind of a national event. But then I'm thinking about, you know, AELA's drive, you know, to nurture the role of creativity in transforming law and governments is, I think, based on the idea that you know, for change to happen, we need cultural change. And stories are the glue that, you know, holds our society together. whether it's about money or law or religions, stories, help us also can change the way we think about something. And I think, this anthology, it's a beautiful example that I think I feel there's a revolution afoot, and that, the stories are changing. And I think we need as a wider range of stories from as many people as possible, all different disciplines working together. And I think that's what AELA does, so beautifully. It really brings people together, in a very caring kind of fellowship, of people who are wanting to make good things happen. And so I'm so proud and grateful, to be able to work, to know you and to work with you all. I'll show you a picture or a couple of pictures that I included in this second anthology. And it comes from a body of work called Devonian Flesh. And these rocks I photographed up in the Kimberley, in the West Kimberley, in a place called Tunnel Creek, where a creek had carved out of this rock, out of this Devonian rock. So you get these incredible fleshy, this fleshy material that I felt was so similar to sort of a bodily flesh, because, it was made up of sea life, basically, and compressed, and at a time where there were actually, land animals were just crawling out of the sea and coming onto the land. So, rocks really, for me, I have this great love and fascination for rocks, but they really make me think about, the deep time, and about that sense of connection that we have with all things on Earth, not just the living, and that rocks are such a fundamental part of making us, making biological life, and, and biological life makes rock life. And, so it's I think, a very clear example of that sort of interconnectedness, and not only with Earth, but, with the stars. And so it sort of brings everything into perspective. I feel it's takes us back to sort of fundamentals, and it also helps, I think about the idea that landscape, it's a story. It's a story we tell ourselves. And I think this is the image that I included in the anthology, and it's called Rock Stars. But, these stories that we tell ourselves about the world, and the way photography works, is that it seems to always suggest that, landscape is something outside and separate to ourselves. And I think with me bringing these rocks and putting them on the table and doing a sort of a starry fabric background is trying to make the point that, that this material is a part of us, literally, and and certainly a part of everything that we do in life. So that's my rationale behind my work, and I hope that's a little bit of a history that of why I love AELA so much.
Oh, Marion, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Hey, could I ask you to bring back up the Devonian Flesh? I'd love to talk about that. That is amazing. It looks like a giant slab of something that
I know
has been harvested from a living creature.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your process.
Okay. So obviously I don't cut these rocks out and bring them home. I photograph them on site, and then so some of these rocks are huge. Some of them I've used as sort of a top of a mountain, or the size of a car, the size of a building. But then, so photographically, you can shrink things, and so I have a rock on the table, or maybe I've had used large pieces of coral, and so then I photographically drop it onto that, so that it appears as though it's on the table. So you know, I'm not I think photography is a construction anyway. So I'm sort of photographically inserting these rocks onto the table to make that point about them being very fleshy and to being, you know, a part of our, you know, well, we consume them a lot in so many ways in terms of powering our lives and phones. But yeah, I'm trying to make that idea that it's an idea that we carry inside us rather than something out there, you know, and separated.
No, that's fantastic, Marion. And Karen said, and great names too. Yeah, just Devonian Flesh. Just
yeah, I think it was called Devonian Flesh Swallowing the Cave.
Amazing. And it really looks like slightly old prosciutto. So
It does.
very conflicting messages in my brain.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marion. And thank you
Thanks.
for the reminder too about the themes and the topics of all of the work we've done over the years together.
Yeah.
Many others like Moretta, I see, is on here.
Yeah.
And many folks we've all been, sometimes I feel, you know, that we are not doing enough inside AELA to honor the arts. But when you look across the years,
Yeah.
we've given we're all doing it as volunteers. We've done some beautiful works and projects together. So thanks, Marion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so over now to Andrew Skeoch. Andrew is possibly known to many of you as someone who does remarkable sound recordings of the living world, but also his insights into what those sounds tell us. He's given many a talk for many a group, including a talk during Earth Laws Month about insights into how birds in particular demonstrate cooperation, not competition in the living world. But I might just hand over to you now, Andrew, to talk a bit about your work and your insights and thoughts and the piece that you're sharing with the anthology. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from Judjarung country in central Victoria. To me, the whole significance of the arts is that as humans, we don't make decisions based upon information. We make it according to emotion, and the information is often used simply to justify our emotional decisions. And that's something that's demonstrated by neuroscientific studies and so on. So to me, the arts is all about emotion. It's, as Marion said, it's about storytelling, it's about significance, about the way that we draw ideas together. So I think that however we do our art and however we tell our stories, it really is, it's the most vital aspect. You can have all the information in the world and still make the wrong decisions, as we are seeing governments all around the world do. So I thought the topic of tipping points was really interesting because very often this term, which has only really popped up in the vernacular in recent time, is associated with things like climate tipping points. And it occurred to me that really we each, as individuals, have our own tipping points. Those moments when suddenly our life changes into something else, we see it from a different perspective. And so what I wanted to read out for you was a little bit of the story of one of my own tipping points. I think we have many of them throughout our lives, but this was a particularly significant one for myself, and I think for many other people in this country. So it's called Of Loss and Listening. Painful experiences often bring a reconsideration of what is important. In the aftermath of the 2019 Black Summer mega fires, I grieved not simply a change in the landscape, but its ruination. 17 million hectares, over 20% of Australia's total forests, burned in one season. Conservatively, upward of 3 billion vertebrate animals immolated, and more species pushed closer to extinction. Many of the cool and wet rainforests affected, which have survived eons since the time of ancient Gondwana, are not expected to regenerate. I especially grieved the magnificent forests of East Gippsland, where I'd first begun nature sound recording nearly 30 years ago, standing with my microphones among a cathedral of trees, hearing the voices of lyrebirds, pink robins, gang cockatoos, golden whistlers, and a multitude of honeyeaters, all singing like audible sunshine around me. To lose such a place and its wildlife, I found just too huge to comprehend. I suspect the heartbreak of the bushfires may have reminded many of what is precious, the real values of community and nature. For myself, it prompted a reevaluation. The devastation, clearly a result of accelerating climate change, was not just an ecological tragedy on an unprecedented scale. It felt personal. In listening back to the recordings I'd made and published on CD all those years ago, I knew that they documented a now vanished soundscape. This gives them a certain scientific value in monitoring regeneration or as a measure of restoration efforts. However, there was little satisfaction in this for me. These circumstances were the opposite of why I'd recorded in the first place. I also thought of listeners continuing to enjoy these recordings, possibly unaware that the places they evoked are so irrevocably changed. Again, this was not the conservation awareness outcome I'd once hoped to convey. In my own lifetime, I was experiencing an environmental loss of staggering magnitude. Nature seemed so fragile and vulnerable, its vitality so easily lost. During this time, I sought contact with friends. Some had been caught up in the events their properties and livelihoods impacted. Others were ecologists with a more specific knowledge of what had happened. And then there were the ongoing heart-to-hearts with old friends, with my partner, Sarah. I also went for walks to listen to the bird song of the still vibrant bushland around our home in central Victoria and be reassured. Everything seemed to circle back to listening. It felt like a bedrock on which to understand not just recent events, but my own life. I thought of the people dear to me. Each have shaped me in their own way by simply being who they are. I reflected, though, that they wouldn't have been able to do so if I hadn't welcomed their influence. So I've come to consider that the measure of a relationship is how much we're prepared to let someone personally influence us. This constitutes the essence of listening for me, not simply to hear someone out, but with an openness to take something from the discussion and come away with a broader outlook. I also thought of Harold, an Aboriginal man I'd met many years ago, and his instruction to me to be still and let the bush get to know me, and that if I did, it would talk to me. He was sharing an Indigenous understanding handed down from generation to generation, a complete and integrated way of both knowing and being in the world. I can now appreciate his words a little better. He wasn't talking about what I might hear in nature at all. In a way, he wasn't even talking about sound. He was referring to an openness, a willingness to be deeply influenced by tuning into the wisdom inherent in nature. For him, listening to nature was a way of learning who we can be. I've been listening to and documenting the world's threatened ecosystems for nearly 30 years now. I've been privileged to travel widely and hear the universality of nature's sound world. I've learned something of her wild languages, been puzzled by her ambiguities, and gradually discerned some meaning in them. The bushfires have been a sad reminder that the softly spoken voice of nature is both precious and so vulnerable. Faced with a human world absorbed in its strivings, it may also seem inconsequential. Yet the voice of nature is the voice of the living world. It speaks of the knowledge of the biosphere, with an authority acquired by natural selection acting over unimaginably vast periods of time. It is expressive of the finely balanced processes that have resulted in the survival and continuance of life. It tells stories of adaptation, diversity, complexity, organization, relationship, interdependence, and sustainability. Life is an honest teacher. And so the voice of nature is an influence we can trust. Nature is speaking to us now of the most crucial matters. It speaks of what is necessary at this time. It is telling us how to live. Now, instead of listening to learn about nature, we must listen to learn from nature.
Wow.
And
Thank you.
that is a part of the manuscript of a book that I'm just completing and hope to have published early next year.
Please plug your book, Andrew. Tell us all about your book. Plug your book, tell us all about your book. But thank you for those beautiful words. I think every Australian has been affected by all the things that have happened over the last few years and beyond. And it's, you know, it's really hard. We've all taken it personally, and your words were beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah, look, it's the book that I've prepared is called Deep Listening to the Natural World, and a lot of it covers how to actually listen to nature, how to sort of decode the language of nature. But towards the end, and this is really the sort of the transition passage that I've just read out, I reflect on what we can actually learn from nature in terms of our own lives. And it just seems to me that a lot of what I'm hearing in nature reflects the kind of processes that AELA and New Economy Network and so on are working towards, systems that are new and supportive, non-confrontational. They're more about, they're more than just supporting environmental care and concern. They're creating community and a good way of living. So that's why I'm so supportive of AELA and what you're all doing. And yeah, my thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so much to think about there. But thank you also for your kind words about AELA's work. And Andrew, if you would like to engage with some of his beautiful recordings on our Earth Arts website, again, thanks to James Lee's IT wizardry, he's got a beautiful link literally on the homepage. You can click on that to listening to nature and hear some of those recordings. And in a week or two, when we release all of the webinar recordings from Earth Laws Month, we'll have a really beautiful talk by Andrew with some of his sound recordings and some images to show how nature connects and cooperates. So thank you, Andrew. And now I'm very delighted to invite our next guest speaker, Karen Hopkins, who's also contributed to our anthology. And Karen, we'll leave it to you to talk about your work and, as I say, whatever inspires you today. Thanks, love.
Hello, thank you. I just want to begin by acknowledging the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work and play, and recognise their continuing connection to this land and pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. And thank you so much, Australian Earth Laws Alliance, for the work that you're doing, and so it's just connecting, supporting and sharing and inspiring and educating so many people. It's and thank you for including my work in this anthology. Well, basically I've been an artist for about 20 years, and I work from photographs and sketches and visual memories. In the process of working and reworking the canvas, I'm painting layers and scraping back using mixed media, starting from an idea, a thought or a sketch or a visual image, and I tend to work intuitively. And through my work, I hope that I'll bring people, my aim is to bring people closer to nature and appreciate and respect the stories, the colours, shapes and textures and essence that it has to offer, and invite the viewer on a journey to the deeper levels that connect us all. that's probably what's led me to this anthology, because what happened more recently is perhaps in the last 5 years I've begun in my showing my art to include poems that have just begun coming through me, I believe. And they sometimes come spontaneously with the paintings. Sometimes a poem might relate to a few paintings, or sometimes they may come afterwards in reflection. So I've just started sharing the poems and the artworks, and feel that perhaps it's another way into the painting and maybe deepens the experience for the viewers. And so the couple of paintings that are and poems that are in this anthology, and thank you for including them both, Come to the Forest and Seeing the Wood from the Trees. And they were both part of an exhibition I had last year at the Gasworks Art Park in Victoria, in Melbourne, called Symbiote Scenes, which was an exhibition that I began painting during the bushfires and I continued working on through lockdown. And I was really fortunate that at least the exhibition was seen for a couple of weeks before it was cut short by another lockdown. And so it's really wonderful that these works have still got a bit of a life of their own and they're being included in this anthology. So the title of the exhibition, which does relate to the paintings because they were part of the exhibition, was Symbiote Scenes, which stemmed from a work that you're probably all familiar with, stems from the word created by Glenn Albrecht, which he created to describe a new era of the Earth's history, affirming interconnection and companionship and mutual interdependence of all life for the mutual benefit of all, and nurtured by humans. So the painting Come with the Forest, I'm sorry that I can't show it to you at the same time, because it might make it a bit more meaningful. Oh, bless you, James. Thank you.
James to the rescue again.
Amazing. Thank you. So this is the poem. So perhaps on the surface it looks like a wintry forest scene, but actually the painting is also painted using fire ash. But that was painted. It was from my own fire to keep me warm. But during the I painted it. I saved the ash and painted it during the bushfire season. And so the painting evolved over some months along with the poem, and it sort of claimed space in my living room, and I kept revisiting it. And interestingly, you might see that on the left-hand side that there's sort of a vague image of a person. So the people just seem to emerge in the painting themselves. So anyway, I'll just perhaps read, if there's time, read the poem. Should I do that, or is there time to do that?
Yes, there's time. If you're only planning to read the one, you can definitely read it all the way through.
Okay, I'll just read the one, then I'll draw attention to the other one. Perhaps
okay, thank you.
Okay, so this one's called Come With Me Into the Forest. Come with me into the forest. Breathe with the trees, feel their signs. Come learn from the stories through the rings of time. Come with me into the forest, we can learn from the trees as they live out the secrets held in their seeds. Connecting and nurturing through chemical waves, scent and sound, sending messages through fungi deep in the ground. Come with me into the forest, bathe in light's ricocheting dance, feel the bark's tender bumps giving home to the ants. Smell composting leaves, hear the rising of sap as it stirs within us a deep impermanence. Come with me into the forest, feel the pain of the saw, through these life-giving companions, grounded, standing so tall, and feel the cycle of oneness that lives in us all, to be filled once again with magic and awe. Come with me into the forest, see the trees from the wood, feel earth's interconnection, acting for all life's good. Honour our strong, gentle giants, forever witnessing change, moving flexibly through centuries of the winds and the rains, for they're symbols of resilience again and again. So that was one of the poems, and the other poem that's included in the anthology is called Seeing the Wood from the Trees, which is just a short poem, and it's painted on a wooden panel that I found, and I've tried to capture the bark textures and the colours of the old forests, and it's also a mixed media piece. And interestingly, I experienced a deep connection painting the trees on the wood, and the poem came spontaneously. So just a few words about the size. That one is about 40 centimetres by 40 centimetres, and the other one is about 1 metre by 1.5 metres. So thank you very much, everybody. It's an honour to be part of this anthology with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely beautiful. And James, thank you for sharing. It was very nice to listen to your words, and not just read your words, but listen to you share your words whilst looking at the art. James, could you go back up to the other one again? Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for contributing, Karen, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm just aware of time, so what we might do is go to Kerry now, and then because we have to finish at 2, when Kerry's finished, we should be able to come back and all of us have a bit of a chat before we go. So, over to you. Is it? I say Kerry, but it's Karen. I apologise. Karen, I know that you're out in the wind. How are you today? And can you speak with us?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And yes, Kerry with an N, Michelle.
Yes.
And thank you for all the amazing work you're doing in this month. You must be exhausted, but it's such good work. And I will say that your work for to try to make ecocide a crime against humanity is one of the main instigators for the collection of poetry, the first collection of poetry I've just brought out and will launch soon, but also some of the poems. And I think I sent you one, Michelle, when you were doing the People's Tribunal for the River.
Yeah.
It was called Ecocidal, and it was just about my terror fury, another one of Glenn's words. Great to hear Glenn Albrecht's words. They're so enabling for us to communicate and connect with one another in this unfolding emergency catastrophe that we haven't been here before. We need to connect more than ever, and Glenn gives us some words. So my terror fury, my rage, my outrage, and my grief was poured into that poem, Ecocidal, and I hope it was useful in your amazing inquiry into what the heck was happening with that river. James, are you still able to pull up a photo of the second photo of the flowers on my poem, Pilgrimage? I would love that, because the image of the flowers is amazing. But I'm just, while he's doing that, you're still there, James?
Yeah, he can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. So I'm going to read Pilgrimage to you, which is, if you can zoom, I don't know if you can zoom in, but see that paddock full of flowers. I mean, it was just, the flowers can strike me dumb. They can have me absolutely struck dumb. But in this case, I opened my mouth and this is what I said. Every 15 to 60 years, when it's told that the flowers are returned like Persephone, meet me in the violet blue mountain uplift, warping and faulting, ascending the high passes. We will traverse out onto Triassic basalt and claystone plateau. Let our lungs, tight with the memory of smoke, breathe in the mountains, busy healing themselves. Take my hand, where the Waratahs are striving back from charcoal deep monocline of stump blackened gums in the absence of birdsong. Let it be late when Quartzo's fluvial sandstone stretches up tippy-toe for the last warmth. Take off your shoes. Tread softly, the pink brushed flannel petals appearing at our feet. Behold the completion of drought, fire, flood sequence that is all this land knows. Tarry with me till stratus fuchsia wisps glaze the evening and we have filled our heart packs with rosy stars. Descend with me to a world overlaid with carpets of them, a world all flower smitten. I was, and I'll acknowledge my sister Adele, who I think's here. Thank you, Adele, for being here. She helped me put that word when I was just raving about the flowers to me. She said to her on the phone, she said, "Kieran, you're all smitten," and I was absolutely smitten. So utterly smitten, and for days it was a bit hard to come back to reality and functioning after these flowers. But these flowers come, very sporadically in the Blue Mountains, and I think in Victoria, the pink flannel flowers, some of you may have seen them. They just they do strike you dumb with the beauty and the generosity of them. And this was after the first rain had come, after the horrendous fires, and the fires that were so devastating to all of us. And Ian spoke so eloquently. I hear the grief, the eco grief there, and I had huge amounts of my own, but the flowers were really healing. And of course, it was the first rains after the floods, and so of course we were gagging for the rain. But now we feel differently about the rain with continued El Ninos. It's like, when is the rain going to bugger off? But the flowers were just so utterly healing for me. So I was thrilled to be able to go there. The other poem I've got in the collection is Ecocentric. I don't think I'll read it today. I'll let you read it on the website if you like. But James has asked me to speak really briefly about some of my work in eco-poetics. So I'll just do that for a few minutes.
Thank you.
So AELA is a really big inspiration for where I sort of meet the world with my eco-poetic work. And I've kind of made up a word, a bit like Glenn has. I've joined two words, eco and poiesis. So, and I've made eco-poiesis, and that kind of describes my process a little bit. Way back in sort of Plato's times, there was a priestess and a seer called Diotima, and she first defined poiesis to create or bring forth upon the beautiful. And I really thought that was a marvelous way to describe sort of our world and living and making poetry. Actually, it's kind of a mystery, but the reason I do it, well, some of the benefits to me for writing poetry is it helps me with my tipping points, and I have them. I have personal tipping points about climate, which are not fun, but writing poetry helps me to sort of write it out, if you like, get to the bottom of it, get through the bottom of it, and move through it. It's important, not getting stuck there. It's an act of resistance to me in the face of such, I see a lot of collective psychic numbing, and it keeps me from not turning away, keeps me awake and aware there. Joanna Macy says, now is not the time to turn away. Earth needs our full presence here, and AELA certainly giving it full presence, though it's not always comfortable. In fact, it's damn uncomfortable. Some of what we heard this morning from people around the world is just diabolical, drinking water, not, just horrendous. So staying with that, and I'm really proud of the way that Earth Law's, resistance across the world is not only staying with it, but actively resisting it. I feel companioned in my eco-poiesis process because my poetry is a conversation and a dialogue and a listening to nature. And so I don't feel so alone sometimes in my eco-anxiety and my terror fury and my rage and my completely, eco-paralysis at times that comes in. And so it becomes empowering. It's an action that I can share and have witnessed, like right now, which is really, really important. And so the AELA publication, it's really important to have a witness here for each other and to feel companioned in that. It keeps my eco-imagination alive, and it stimulates the remembering of my eco-unconscious, which reminds us all that we are nature, we're not separate. It invites me into my eco-self, which is a lovely antidote to my ego self. And then it, my work needs to meet the world somewhere. And so I've brought out a collection, and I will launch this in November, in parenthesis. I'll launch it in Sydney somewhere. So if you're around, you're very welcome to come to drop by. But I also am very inspired by other poets who are writing in this area. Freud famously said everywhere he went, the poets were there before him. And I find that poets are ahead, and they're there in this emerging conversation about eco-grief and anxiety and eco-dread. And so I'm inspired by their work, the work of Joy Harjo in particular, a Native American Cree from the Cree Nation poet. She's just extraordinary. She writes poems for those who would climb through the sky at the end of this world into the next. And it's remarkable, her perspective. And And so I do a bit of poetry therapy online and offer people a poetic invitation to acknowledge, express, and process these sometimes really strong and paralysing emotions. And I will do some for the Earth Feels Symposium in Sydney Uni in December, and I'm really honoured to be chosen to do that. So I just want to thank AELA and for this opportunity to have witness and to be companioned by other contributors, indeed, and not feel so alone. It's so important to be connected in this, whatever it is that we're sailing into, this unknown. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for both your beautiful photos and your beautiful words. And everyone is now going to be using, flower smitten for some time to come, I think. But also thank you for telling us about the loneliness, because I think all of us feel that. And I can speak from my own personal experience during those 2019, 2020 fires. It was the first time in my adult life I curled up in fetal position and thought, if I have to go now, it's okay, because I don't want to be here if all these animals are gone. And I think when we reach that point, even people know I'm endlessly optimistic because I just refuse to give up. But I think even when people like me curl up in fetal position, and something I don't talk about very often, but I think I should in this group, is I ended up at the doctor because I thought I'd developed some kind of rash. I had this redness and this itchiness and this soreness all over my body. And then I thought, oh gosh, I'm a woman, maybe it's menopause, or they couldn't find any reason for it whatsoever. And it wasn't until a month later that I realized that my psyche was so distressed, that my body was literally on fire and was itchy and sore. There was no physiological reason for it. And never in my life have I experienced anything like it. And I just remember thinking, I wish I could face it as you have all faced it, write about it, take photos about it. But as many of my colleagues know, what I do is I get up the next day and I work. I organize an event. I get people to talk to each other. And I'm thinking now and then maybe I should slow down and write some of my feelings, but I think I'm almost too frightened to face them some days. So I'm really delighted and proud that you all can face these things and are sharing them with others, because people like me who repress and hold it in and just keep going need to stop and reflect that we are all nature, and that burning my entire skin being on fire was because I was in such grief about the animals and the plants. So all of these spaces matter and all of this work matters. And by even being together, there's only 20 of us on here today. This makes us all feel rich and supported. Certainly me, as the crazy lady leading all of this work, I'm terribly grateful for all of you for being part of our little network inside AELA. And I'm really admiring of you and your work. So very heartfelt thank you. And what I might do is just see if James has any final words, because we are actually at time. And as you know, we have yet another event tonight. So we've all got to dash off and get ready for other things. But today's been really beautiful, and I thank you all. And I might let the last words to James, who's helped make the anthology possible.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank so much Karen, Marion and Andrew for speaking today, and for all of the contributors who've given works to the anthology, and reflecting on what Karen's saying, just the amount of the presence, I guess, that this has built, and then the connections that can be drawn and strengthened through this process of bringing these works together. It's, for me, it's I feel very honoured to be able to to have these works brought together and be able to shared by AELA. So it's been it's been an amazing process, and please enjoy. I hope you all read it and read it again, and chase some of the links in there. There's the odd link to a video and that. So please enjoy and share widely. And thank you.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again in person or online soon. Thank you, James.
Michelle, you haven't actually said that the thing.
I hereby declare
the anthology is launched.
I'm sorry, I'm going to do a
bottle of
Michelleism.
champagne over it.
Absolutely. No, I'm going to go one better. I'm going to do a Michelleism. I do a trumpet. Ready? I hereby declare the anthology has been launched, and everyone can go forth and read and enjoy and connect with all of the artists in their own work in their own places too. And I should have let James have the final word, but we really want over the coming 12 months to use Zoom to its best capacity to promote all of your work. We want to revamp our Earth Arts work. It kind of slowed down with COVID, but both in terms of real activities together on the ground and in the bush, but also we're going to start hosting more like monthly and every 2 months webinars where artists can share their work and talk about what you're doing. So please stay in touch, shoot us notes if you're interested in doing those kinds of things. And I'll be dragging James along and more Zoom adventures. Hooray! But yes, we hereby declare the launching has been launched. Thank you.